Yeah, man. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, how's the week turning out for you?
Pretty good.
Oh, that's good, good. Have any athletes
Turn out
competing in
the
the
end.
national games?
No, not really.
No? Okay. All right. Nice. Uh-uh.
But turnout like the last weekend, the education was like good.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I saw you had a really good turnout. That's always nice. Gets everything, when you get a bigger, that bigger group together, you get more perspectives, and I think it's kind of turns out to be, you can put more information out there, but you can also get different perspectives on the matter. So that's always
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Wonderful. What were you teaching about, if you don't mind me asking?
Like long-term athletic development.
Oh, nice. Okay. Some
But
LTAD.
actually it's like telling the coaches you don't really have to like let your athlete like lift heavy. There's always a different solution like speed training and like movement. Yeah, think outside the box.
There you go. No, that's wonderful. I think especially a lot of the technical coaches, they see a lot of the elite athletes,
Yeah.
whether it's snatch and cleans, the things that look pretty, and a lot of the developmental coaches who have this stake in the sport for long periods of time, they kind of jump quite a few steps to get to those real fancy
Yeah.
mechanics. And
Yeah.
when you start incorporating too much chaos without without focusing on the foundations of the biomotor learning, it really puts athletes in a tough position, because
Yeah.
they put this, I have to snatch every time I enter the weight room into their head. And if they just take a couple steps back, and maybe, it doesn't mean that you take the Olympic lifting or the primary lift completely out of the equation, but maybe just kind of turning the tilts and kind of putting yourself or the athlete in a position where they feel just a little bit more confident, comfortable.
Yeah, man.
Mm-mm.
So like I want to talk about a little bit more about like skill or like testing that kind of stuff. But
Okay.
first of all, like, can you like introduce yourself for the coaches who don't know you yet?
Wonderful. Yeah, of course. My name is JD Snyder. I am the head strength coach of the Chinese Taipei Cycling Association. I've been living here in Taiwan now for a little over 2.5 years, and loving it. So I've had a few years of experience working for the Chinese Olympic Committee, also through a contractor working for Team China's national track cycling team. Also had experience working with their shooting athletes, which was very fascinating.
Cool.
Before that, working back in the States, I was actually working at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. I was doing research as an exercise physiologist. We were actually looking at how to get someone who recently had a stroke, how to get them back into a more functional state. So trying to improve strength, but also looking at how nutrition can play into, regenerating that neuromuscular connection into the tissue. For those who aren't familiar with the impact of what a stroke does, typically one side of your body, loses complete function. So you notice, as patients were starting the program, it's different changes in their gait, how they walk, being able to most of the time have someone assist in most of their activities of daily living. And then finishing the program, as we see their strength and even some of their power increase. And, we're seeing that older adults can really regenerate. So that kind of like sparked a big interest in me as far as, what can I do to kind of jumpstart the preventative, the training well before any of these habits take place. So that's what really had me intrigued when I had the opportunity to work for the Chinese Olympic Committee. I noticed that my interest in research was, very high, but I also saw, the impact of the training, and that's what I wanted to be, more involved with. So
that's cool, man. It was fascinating.
Yeah, so it was a real interesting trajectory, getting done with grad school and seeing the real world, and I think seeing that there are so many different possibilities, when you get into the field of strength and conditioning, and for anyone who's aspiring to be a strength coach out there, I think pick your poison here. It can either be something that you jump into a job and it's, a real tough to kind of jumpstart, whether it's, pulling your population in, trying to figure out which population, the youth, the elderly, the, athletic, the elite, where you're going to start. And I think that once you kind of jump into the pool and kind of get the art of the coaching, meeting, greeting, trying to figure out what, athletes and different populations are really attracted to when it comes to fitness, starting with the easy wins, and then slowly starting to evolve your practice into the things that are going to be the most impactful for, whether it's their health, well-being, or their actual fitness.
It's cool, man. I can literally feel your passion like through the
yeah,
through my
wonderful.
phone, man.
Yeah. I definitely, that's definitely something that I try to bring to every training session. If it's not just, kind of reading through the plans, but, making sure that I'm connecting with each of the athletes that are coming to the training session, figuring out, hey, how was your weekend? What'd you do that wasn't, on the performance side? Did you get a chance to go out, explore? Did you, get a chance to just be a kid, not just an athlete?
Yeah.
Finding out what really drives each human being is, I think, a strong key to figuring out how you can then, give them the keys to their own success. So
that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing all this, man. Just when you finish all like what you just said, I think there's more than there's a lot of people gonna feel the passion you're gonna bring.
Yeah, I think, when you're dealing with human beings, it can be, I know everyone's probably going to hit me for this metaphor, but it can be quite contagious. I don't mean to mean, anything with COVID, but the emotions, when someone reaches goals, that's a very emotional tie to the training atmosphere. And that is something that a lot of the coaches who are relying on online training, I struggle to understand. I've been consulted from quite a few athletes to program remotely, and it's so difficult. And there's a lot of athletes and coaches who have a very great connection through online training, whether it's just automated feedback from sending videos of a lift, or maybe just scheduling an online conversation after the training. And then there are also coaches who are so dedicated that, have the Zoom call or Instagram live to where, they're watching the training session. And that's great. That's awesome. But if I'm not there, I don't think that I can give my best. And if I'm not being able to provide my best as a coach, that's something where I try to know my limits and where I can affect the most. So
cool, man. Cool.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
So we talked before, and so here's the thing. Just like today, there's a coach boxing and let's say basketball. And
are these technical coaches or strength coaches?
No, technical coaches.
Okay.
And they're asking me about it, if I can do something like testing every month so they can like follow their, so they can see their athlete is they're gonna like progress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but here's the thing, it's like when we do movement or like things like speed, we train speed. It's not often that you can see like the progress, right?
It's going to depend on the quality and the quantity, like what you're looking to kind of tap into. For me, especially on the track, coaching track cycling, it's really fascinating because a lot of the work that we put into the weight room, there is such a strong relationship between, whether it's we're measuring force, ballistic power, their rate of force development. There are things that we have made relationships with over the last year and a half of tracking, some of these elite level athletes. And when I go to reflect on their progress, I also get qualitative notes from the coaches saying, you're able to see this, in the athlete, whether it's a more aggressive push in their start, a more advantageous position when they're trying to be more aerodynamic in the long distance athletes. And I'm able to show whether it's, maintenance in power, in our sprint cyclists, the ability to, utilize a bigger gear and create more effective torque in their flying 200s. All of that, it kind of matches with the coach's notes. And that's something that I always try to aim for. But in something as skilled as a combat athlete, I think that there's far more, obstacles, depending on the nature of the competition season and, what those goals are for, that level of athlete. So for the boxers that you're talking about, what level are they currently in their skill?
It's like, I think in their skill, they're probably like the top in the nation.
Okay.
But it's like, they're like junior high, man.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow.
And same as that, it's like junior high. They just won the like national champion last year, like for the high school.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah, that's wicked. I would definitely refer you to my pal Isaiah McBride, who's working at the National Training Center. So, he had a chance to work with Yunting going to Tokyo. He's also working with quite a few of now that he's working for the Boxing Association. He definitely has a great level of impact for a lot of provincial athletes as well as the national. So, just looking at the conversation that you and the technical coaches had, what did you guys agree on? Did you guys agree on maybe a schedule for, a testing battery of some sort?
I don't know. We're gonna discuss it tomorrow. Like tomorrow.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah,
I got you.
It's like yesterday they go and see the national game.
Uh-huh.
And they just like, I think maybe something just come up in their mind and that they bring up today.
So it's like that last minute. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's difficult. Yeah. That's difficult.
I'm like, why don't you just say that before? Like from the beginning, I'm like, what? And here's the thing. It's it's only been like 3 weeks left for another like game or another competition. So I'm like, what?
It's so frustrating. So frustrating. Yeah, I think, you and I have had many conversations about like the culture of sport and, the timing of whether it's, the testing, the reporting, there isn't, before I started working for this cycling team, there was a whole lot of chaos in figuring out, when would be an appropriate time to test, not only, the time of the season, but is there also going to be, a bit of a break in the intensity and training volume in the actual, skill of the sport, so that we can really put them to the test when it comes to their fitness. And if we can really get a great, perspective on their fitness, then moving forward, we can see how it's affecting their skill. And a lot of the coaches who I've worked with in the past, there's been some give and take, as the relationship grows. But I think being in Taiwan, it has been make progress under the circumstances that you have. And then as the progress becomes a little bit more evident to their skill, then the leniency in working and collaborating with the skill coaches to making the time within their training schedule so that we can have that proper rest before, any type of training or monitoring continues. And that's been tough. And I've talked with quite a few coaches, not only here, but also in mainland China, and trying to navigate that has always been tricky. And it's going to depend a lot on, how crucial the competitions are, and how much, those athletes are going to rely on those competitions, whether it's going to be some kind of qualifier, or, this is going to determine, the opportunities for them to train. For a lot of them, this, the results of these competitions are going to provide them, the materials, the financial support to continue their endeavor to become a national or international champion. So there's a lot on the line most of these times.
And also there's like most of my athletes, because they like spend like a lot of time training their skill, no matter it's like basketball or it's like boxing or like, let's say, badminton.
Mm-hmm.
Because most of the time they're like training their skill, and it's like most of them have like lower back pain.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta deal with all these like injury and still need to be focusing on the training.
Yeah, and that's tough, isn't it?
and the game. And the coaches always want to be like they want the training volume to be so high and the training intensity to be high as well. I'm like, how am I gonna let that happen, man?
Yeah.
And also be able to put in like tests. I'm like, I don't know.
How much of that is really necessary? That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
I try my best to be a little proactive, even though most of the time I am creating a program or creating a timeline, and it might not be the most specific. It might not be, a schedule that is definitive, but I provide this mock timeline and kind of keep that updated based on what information the coach has given me. And the best part about having a great relationship with your coach is, the more information they want to share, the more that can kind of guide your training process. And I think for most technical coaches who are really, brilliant when it comes to, learning the sport, being able to apply different, whether it's things like adjusting the equipment used or, the actual training routine, all of that really is quite knowledgeable. But when it comes to, the physiology, the mechanics of movement, sometimes that can really get lost in translation, whether you're speaking in Chinese or English, or Taiwanese in that case. And I think that if you can be proactive by creating and modifying that timeline for yourself and kind of sharing that continuously with the coaching staff, the more that they can kind of think about that plan farther and farther in the future. Because if you have a coach who is, just looking for the day after and day after, it kind of shows that maybe either one, the resources just quite aren't there to know, whether or not you're going to have your training facility or, what athletes are going to be, consistent in this training plan. all of that can really stump, any type of progress in your training. And I've had to learn that a little bit through the hard way, just kind of showing up to training and figuring out, this is, supposed to be a high school or college group of, up to 20 athletes, and only 5 of them showed up because 4 of them have exams, 2 of them got injured, and, a dozen more or so are just not here. And, going through a few of those, where you feel like, oh man, is this really how the day is going to end up? Kind of makes you want to over prepare in that sense, so that one, the coaches know you've got your backup plans, but also trying to get the more that you can practice that habit, the more your coaches are going to take on that role and say, well, I've already done it for you. And you just look and you see this beautiful report of, training volume and intensity. And now I get a pretty good layout. I'd say maybe once or twice a month. And it's beautiful. It gives me a bit on, where we're training, what the primary goal is, and how we're looking to navigate it through the week as far as training volume and intensity. And it might not be, the most precise when it gets translated, but at the same time, it gives me just enough of an idea to where, I can really modify my plan and really have it fit to, the athlete's, needs. And then after that, it's really more so what the athletes are giving me back in feedback, monitoring things like soreness, their training impulse, things like monotony and strain through their acute chronic workload ratio. All of those things coming together, kind of paint me a big picture of, how stressed the athletes are and how well, some of these elite guys, they're able to recover in a jiff. Some of these athletes who are, just joining the national ranks, might need a little bit more time to adjust. So instead of suggesting anything on the technical side, I'm just going to do my part to modify their physical preparation so that they can hang with the big dogs when it comes to, whether it's heavy volumes or just, real high intensity bouts. And then showing the coach say, well, I did this for some of the novice athletes, and this is how, they were able to bounce back, whether that's flipping through some soreness sheets, going through some of our dashboards with kind of a weekly change in their soreness, what they're complaining about, what they're able to kind of bounce back really quick from, and relating that all to, the physical training plan. Then we can do the same thing as they start reporting, their skill training and how intense that becomes.
Cool. But how do you discuss which test you're going to use with the and how do you do the conversation with the technical coach? This is the test I'm going to use, and how long I'm going to test it.
Okay. Yeah. So looking through and seeing, where our competition lies, that's obviously a no-brainer. Coach, when's the next competition? How much time do I have to really see those results? And if they're going to tell me, competition's in 2 weeks, I go, the test is going to be meaningless, coach. I mean, monitoring in the same sense is going to be a little different, depending on, your sources of technology. For example, we had a really good block from September until October 6th, 7th, and 8th for the national track competition here in Taiwan. And we were able to look at their explosive force and also looking at their rate of force development. Now, some of the advanced athletes who have been doing the maximal isometric strength tests for, over a year and a half now, their rate of force development is, really excelled because of that skill in their strength. They're able to recruit those larger, muscle fibers that are more explosive, and they're able to recruit them a lot quicker, also known as rate coding. So because they're able to kind of tune into those larger muscle groups, we're going to adjust those KPIs. So maybe instead of, the late rate of force development, we're going to start looking at early rate of force development and seeing how, as we're coming up to a primary competition, how are they able to really recruit those larger muscle fibers a little bit more quickly. And I think, it all comes down to force time characteristics. What is the time that you're allowing to express, whether it's strength, power, and how can we adjust or regulate that time based on the skill of the athletes. After that, it kind of depends on how well that you're familiarizing the athlete. I never want to put an athlete in a position, especially before the competition, to do something that they've never done before.
Yeah.
So, for instance, I love, Sam Azzino and JB Morin have the great Excel sheet where just by measuring the length of complete extension of the ankle, knee, and hip, measuring the distance of the limb, and then also getting them up and measuring the height from the ground to the hip in a 90-degree stance, you can actually calculate with a decent amount of precision there how much force and power just by using those limb lengths and their body weight and the jump height. So before I even started using that in our testing battery for a KPI for the relative force and power output, we were doing that for, I would say, probably 6 to 7 weeks, just looking at, squat jump and counter movement jump. The technology that I had, we, started to make sure that they could maintain in certain bounds, and the learning, was very progressive. It wasn't something that I threw it in there and, gave that report to the coach, but I gave them opportunities to learn how to use it. Same thing with isometric testing. If you've ever been restricted doing an isometric test, that it can be pretty uncomfortable. And surprisingly enough, I helped out some of our track and field athletes who were going to the national games, and they decided they wanted to do a test. And I told them, if competition is a week from this test, I don't want to show any of the athletes the results. And the coach and I agreed on that. And it was awesome. It was awesome. We actually used this opportunity to kind of see everyone, and we put everything, as soon as it was calculated in their maximal force, we did it relatively. So we were taking their force measures, and then we were dividing it by their body weight, and seeing how everyone compares in relative strength, relative explosive strength. And the reason being there is we restricted their time to a 1.1 second protocol. So you have to push against this device rather quickly. The 3 to 5 second protocol, using that for more maximal strength, I know would have been a little bit more fatiguing for these athletes who also had, training in the subsequent days. So we use this opportunity to kind of get everyone together, create a real strong unity within the team, and just kind of used it as like a practice test. Later on, I still, applied those results and sent them over to the coach, but I requested that, before the competition, I don't want you to show these to the athletes. Like they saw like a relative kg, they saw what they were pushing. So it's not like it was any surprise or anything, but to have them harp on these tests wouldn't be something that I would want to show. Whereas my athletes who PR'd in their explosive strength prior to their track cycling competition, I was quick to say, all right, PR. And even if they were above about 85%, I just put together a new dashboard so that they can see from the first week of our training where we tested to later on where we were doing complex training with a ballistic movement and explosive isometric strength. They could see how it improved as we got closer to the competition. So not only their peak forces, but also looking at the rate of force development as we got closer and closer to competition. And taking a step back and seeing the big picture, you could also see how, a small deload prior to their competition also, kind of gave way for that fitness fatigue to start, letting fitness to overcome. And I think that's what it's all about, just being able to have that step-by-step process, having a weekly chat with the coach saying, all right, week 2, week 3, let's get ready because we're going to throw the hammer down and start pushing some levels when it comes to, kind of giving them this fatigue shot, making sure that it's going to be something that, pushes the threshold. And for some of the elites, that's going to mean, heavier training impulse. And for others, it's probably going to be just maintaining and giving them the same load when it comes into their skill. So having that balance for every athlete, depending on the skill of their sport and their relative strength, it all comes together really nicely.
Cool, man. Thanks for sharing, man.
Yeah, really, of course. Yeah.
So, so I'm going to jump into the next one.
Okay.
So, is there, any cultural difference, for, technical coaches in, Taiwan or, Asia between coaches in, let's say, the state?
Yeah, I would definitely say there's a lot of cultural differences just in the working environment alone. I think that, moving over to Asia, there was not as much of a harp into how the training process is coming along in a qualitative perspective. So everything over here, I think, becomes much more data driven. What can you prove to me that shows, that they're improving, whether it's their strength, their power, and so forth. And we've done everything from using, velocity training to kind of see how their, a maximal load greater than 80% kind of changes in their velocity, and using that to estimate their 1RM. When it comes to power outputs, being able to see how things like different multiple loaded jumps can change that power velocity curve. And then obviously the isometric testing, which I think has been a real game changer, not only has been a fantastic source in the training program, but also obviously in our testing regimen as well. Like I said, being able to have something that shows how well the athlete is expressing force through a controlled period of time, can really play a great role to the athlete to figure out, what kind of time they need and what type of how that affects their force outputs. So going back to, just kind of communicating with the coach, I would say that coming back from my brief time in China, when I was working for a contractor, I started working for some of the collegiate teams. And at first it was this period of time where there wasn't a whole lot of change within the sport training program, because I wasn't with the team long enough to kind of have that authority or collaboration with the head coach. But as we started seeing more and more progress, then it was this reciprocation. I help the team, I guide them, I provide, whether it's different types of movements or being able to regulate the loads within the training program, to show and hear the athletes express how, I felt more powerful. In my flip turn, I was able to push off the wall farther. I got off the block, much more quicker. Things like that, where I could hear the passion of the effects of the fitness program into the training, and then hearing the hearing the remarks from the athletes following some of these bigger competitions gave the coach the idea, saying, all right, well, you gave us, some keys to success. We're going to, kind of work with you. So being able to, come to practice, be a little bit more supportive, and eventually just becoming more a stronger part of the team, whether it was, the times I could see them at competition or, just being around for their practice, all kind of made more improvements within that process of the coach and I working together to kind of have a more, long-term and definitive plan. Back in the States, I think, especially in the collegiate setting, there was quite a bit of, collaboration, speaking with a coach at every training session, being able to be there. I remember just getting started with my graduate assistantship, working with swimming and track and field. And, it was fantastic how open, some of the coaches were to, just kind of being in mind with their testing, what they're monitoring at that time. And I think that because I was in a program where, there was a lot of research being contributed to strength and conditioning, all of the coaches who knew that they were going to be working with graduate assistants in the weight room, they all knew that their athletes needed to be there. Not only did it give them a sense of accomplishment and affected them psychologically, whether it's, improving strength that, was, in our preseason, or being able to, prevent injury. We had the research to support why all those athletes in different fields should be in the weight room. And I think that because there was more education being spread, the coaches were more willing to kind of provide what their needs were. For the swimmers, when they were going through some high volumes, if we were doing any type of pulling, especially vertical pulling during their high volumes, the coach would just hear nonstop, oh, so sore, so sore. So we knew during that time we would kind of pull back, and we'd kind of focus a little bit more on the horizontal pulls and, kind of lower volume there. I think as long as you have a coach who is, kind of sharing what they're expecting of the athletes, it doesn't need to be the fine details, but just give us a goal that we can shoot for. Because if I'm not aiming towards the same goal as you, then I think that, we need to find a new ground to, step on together. Let's try to target, the same goal. And if you can provide, how the athlete's reaching that goal in the skill, then I can provide that skill, or provide that, the feedback in their fitness. And from there, we've got ourselves a perfect tablet for, how the next generation of athletes are going to be able to achieve the same goal.
Yeah, man. Cool. Thanks for sharing all of this, man.
Yeah, of course. It's a pleasure.
Really helpful, man. And
wonderful.
I think it's going to help a lot of young coaches out there.
That's good. That's good. I actually, I'm hoping to help out a little bit more. I just applied through the NSCA. There's an appointment with the Committee of Education, and I'm really hoping. I don't see as many outlets over here. I do see them quite a bit come through in Taipei, but with COVID, it's so difficult to coordinate opportunities for international collaboration. So I'm really hoping to kind of expand. I've been working with the International Society of Sports Nutrition. They just held a phenomenal conference looking at women's health and female athletes, and what we can do to kind of help guide females to look at their health and well-being, their menstruation cycle, and how we're able to, as coaches, provide better feedback within the training plan, and then also looking a little bit more in the psychology of the elite athlete with the Society for Neurosports. So if anyone who is here who is interested in, trying to, think outside the box, as strength coaches, I think we go straight to, what's the best exercise? How can we show power? And we start losing the idea of how we can better help and assist these athletes become better human beings. So I strongly suggest there is a phenomenal, cohort of both teachers, applied scientists, and coaches, in both of those organizations, and many, many more, that I'm hoping to share a bit more often.
Cool, man. Probably you should come here and chat more.
Sounds good.
Maybe
sounds good.
Second episode or
one of many for sure.
Cool, man. So last question, and I'm gonna let you go. Okay.
Yes, sounds good. Go ahead.
So here in Taiwan, there's gonna be a lot of coaches. They're gonna do it's gonna be their skill training.
Okay.
The volume is gonna be so high, all year round. So how do you deal with that? At the same time, be able to let your athlete grow or be stronger. We all know periodization. It's the first thing your athlete gonna learn new stuff or be strong is to go through rest, right? Or recovery.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. But here in Taiwan, it's all year round, training.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that and at the same time let your athlete getting stronger?
So I think one, just being able to have some type of data to support why your athlete is not getting better. I can tell you for an example, I worked with some rhythmic gymnasts in one of the local universities, and these girls would they were unreal how strong and dedicated they were to their sport. Most of these girls would record how many hours they were training. And for some of the college programs, we're looking at somewhere between 9 to 10 hours. Now, how that goes within their school schedule, I'm not sure. But I do know that most of these girls were close to exhaustion. And most of our training sessions would be through some type of, active recovery. And with that, a lot of them, would kind of go through some of these emotional phases where, they would just hit a wall. And that was the time where it was very quick for me to, pull up their sorenesses, and being able to track those, whether it's weekly, biweekly, if you have them, go through every session, that's fantastic. Now on a monthly schedule, just to kind of keep myself and the athletes protected from, plans like that, I put into motion a sleep survey, looking at, how well they gauge their sleep. And then we also have a form of technology where we're monitoring their sleep on, several occasions throughout the month. So I would say to protect your interest in changing the coach's mind, being able to express that through things like training loads, training impulses, strain, monotony within the training loads that you're seeing. Acute chronic workload ratio is, fantastic to just kind of see within a year of, how that is undulating. And if the coach's plan is, very effective, then what you'll see is, you'll see as their training plan becomes less and less, in volume, that they're able to maintain those intensities. They're able to show you that their fitness in whatever metric that you're monitoring, especially, strength and power, that all of those should be, relatively high when they need it. So if you're noticing that things that you're measuring are, kind of staying on their baseline, then obviously either one, they don't have enough time to train for you, or the quality that their body is in during that training time is not ideal. The more and more of those sessions that you see, the more, proof essentially that you have, not to kind of throw it in your coach's face, because no one wants that, but it's a great conversation starter to say, this is what I'm seeing from athlete A. Their rate of force development was way down. Having something like their smallest worthwhile change and saying, well, it's definitely below this baseline, and we're supposed to be picking it up this week because my volume's starting to go down. But if the cycling, or whatever sport it is starting to expand during this time when we're, coming up to a competition, and we want these scores to, show some promise and some adaptation, then we have to kind of come to a common ground. And the more of those conversations that you have, and whether it's a team approach or an individual athlete, I think just by narrowing it to one athlete, you can kind of show the coach, this athlete needs just a little bit more rest. Is it okay? Can I reduce the intensity for, this week, give them a little bit more time to recover, and then, let's see where that takes them. And most of the time you give them just a wee bit of a break. They're going to come back fighting the next, 2 to 3 sessions, because they know that you're looking out for them. So. Yeah.
Pretty cool, man.
Yeah. So I got a quick question for you, Eric. So going forward with your testing for boxing, with a sport that is, combat sports, I think there's very few times where the athletes feel it's necessary to back off. And usually it is like very, very sudden, very quick to their competition. So in your history working with combat athletes, how have you been able to either kind of tune into some type of like microdosing, giving like that small dash of maximal strength, or being able to find ways to convince or trick them so that they're doing maybe just a little bit less work during those periods where you really need them to deload?
It's like maybe sometimes I just like do something like post-activation potentiation. So tell them that it's going to be exhausting. So they're going to need like rest more. Or I can do something like movement, like rotational power, like throwing something like med ball, or like something with a band.
Okay. Yeah. That's nice. I mean, I like that. Whenever I tell my athletes, like, all right, there's going to be a test, they are so quick to say, all right, like I gotta make sure I sleep, my 8 to 9 hours, you can kind of see them work through it. Like, I gotta be ready for tomorrow. Oh boy. They start to get a little excited, but they also are like real ready to, kind of throw the gloves on and get ready to, give their, 100.
Hey, here's the thing. I'm not really into like testing or like whatever, getting the data, because there's like so many times like strength coaches just training for the test, not really training for what they're going to be on their maybe like boxing or like doing basketball. I mean, they're not really going to be performing better like after you like let them like squat heavier.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more to that. And again, this is going to vary, between some of your novice and elite athletes. But I think a lot of them don't understand how important, the important part of strength training for anyone who's really interested to be a coach is, making sure that you're hitting all the foundations. If you're seeing a natural progression if you're seeing athletes attend, you know, those 2 to 3 sessions every week, you know, you wait 6 to 8 months and you're going to see some incredible, you know, turnouts. Being able to show up on like that last day or the last week before competition and saying, oh, coach, new athlete, like, you know, put me into the test. No. And I can't tell you how many times some of those athletes who just kind of showed up, you know, to one of those later sessions, and it's, you know, put me in, coach, to something that they've never done before. And it's, why do you want to take that risk? Like, you've got a game in, you know, 2 or 3 days. You know, why? You know, let's get you focusing. You know, you have to earn that right. You know, I want to make sure that you're, you know, committed to, you know, like you said, in that long-term period before you're coming in just for, you know, some kind of fancy test that, you know, to be precise, like, you just see a number, but I'm looking at, you know, well, how well can you, you know, hold that posture? Or, you know, we're doing some type of jump test. Are you able to, you know, rapidly descend in that counter movement? You know, there's so many different types of the testing, from not just the measurement, but also like what we're seeing from the coach's eye.
Yeah, it's like for me, it's like the movement is like more important than how much they lift. And
definitely.
So it's hard to like discuss this with the like strength coach. Technical coach. Yeah,
I gotcha.
Yeah, but
so real quick, because this is a really interesting. You know, I've had to, you know, really make sure through the process that I was a bit more on this quantified side. But I think you said it best. Like, the quality of their movement, you know, is really going to bring out a lot more success in their overall athleticism. So as a coach, you know, if you don't have any technology, what is your you know, most reliable way to, you know, get that information to the coach?
So maybe the running posture looks better.
Okay. All right. Well, even something more simple than that. I mean, everyone here has probably got an iPhone, right? I mean, the slow motion videos are unreal. How well you can, you know, it doesn't need to be the latest high tech. You know, whether it's, you know, some type of speed gun, or, you know, you've got the old fashioned, video camera, but to have a phone on hand where you can, you know, do a quick slow-mo of a counter movement jump, and seeing, you know, one thing that I've been really interested in is looking at, you know, squat depth during a counter movement jump. You know, for a lot of the athletes who I'm seeing are getting a little bit more explosive, you know, they've been put into that, you know, quarter squat position during some of these heavy lifts. And as we're getting a little bit more skilled in jumping, you know, that depth, that knee angle, that hip angle during their counter movement as they're transitioning into their concentric push is starting to be elevated a little bit more. They're starting to utilize that stretch shortening cycle more wisely. So something like that, or like you said, with the posture in whether it's their acceleration or top speed position, that can really come through with some crucial information for the coaches.
Or like I just tell them, like, maybe this week I let them sprint like maybe 30 meters and like maybe like 6 times.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just tell the coaches I let them like sprint maximally like 6 times. And 6 times, like between sets, I let them like recovery for like 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
Just try to like get them recovery more.
Yeah. Okay. What kind of things have you been doing to kind of adjust the recovery? I know a lot of the athletes that I've worked with, they've really started to kind of take hold of, you know, things like our active and passive recoveries. but I've been focusing a little bit more on our breathing patterns. Have you explored any of those pathways during your recovery sessions?
Because they're like some of them, if they're like on national team or like pro athletes, I would do like breathing. But for like if it's like high school or like junior high, probably just something like ISO.
Okay.
Yeah. Probably like ISO.
So walk me through one of those sessions for your high schoolers. So you said you're just going through some isometrics. Is that what you said? Okay.
Like maybe do some isometric for like the warm up. And maybe some sprint drills like A-skip. Yeah, A-march.
Cool. Okay.
And like hopping and like a little bit like wall drill. And like probably like 5 or 6 sets of like sprinting, like 30 meters.
Solid. There you go. Okay.
And a little bit like lower body lifting. Mostly like single leg. And then just upper body.
Got it. Cool. Yeah. That sounds great, man. Do you mind if I throw this out to some of the folks who are tuning in?
Sure.
For our next chat, I'm curious, does anyone, whether it's coach or athlete, have any questions about, whether it's performance, getting stronger, maybe even something as far as getting rid of a specific type of injury? I know there's a couple coaches who I've worked with in the past who are tuning in, as well as one of the newly appointed physical therapists. So it'll be fantastic to maybe get a couple questions that we can build on for our next conversation.
Sure,
so would
man.
you mind asking the group in Chinese what their interest would be?
Okay. Sorry, can you say that again and so I can translate that?
No problem. For anyone who's tuning in, curious what type of questions they have, whether it is about the strength and conditioning, rehabilitation, nutrition, or psychology that they would like to hear about in the future.
Okay. So 好，所以他这边想要问就是如果给这些听众有没有想要问的问题，不管是可能伤害预防啊、营养啊，或是任何可能周期任何方面的东西想问的话，可以留言给我，然后我们会把这个当成 like 接下来第2集我们会讨论的这一集。Okay, just finish that.
Wonderful, yeah. It's been fantastic. Do you have any other questions for me, Eric?
No, I think I've just finished. Thanks, man.
Awesome. Yeah, anytime. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it.
All right. Talk soon, mate.
See you.
All right, cheers.
So that's all for today. 所以如果有什么问题可以私讯给我，然后或是给 John， 然后我们会再整理起来，然后做第2集的准备。OK。